All right, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Team Member Perspective podcast show. Got a special guest today, John Marshall, team member out of Utah. Guys, I'm excited, John. Appreciate you taking time out of your day and joining us today.
Of course, my pleasure.
So, guys, we're going to just start. John has found massive success in the team member seat. John, is it safe to say you're kind of in an office manager position?
Yeah, we can say that. I'm helping run the office, and my agent here is awesome and gives me a lot of freedom and flexibility to help train and stuff. So yeah.
So John has not only found success in his personal production, we'll talk about that a little bit, specifically with his life insurance production. And the guy's putting up, $15,000 in annual premium on a monthly basis consistently. And so he's getting it done at that level, which is incredible. But he's also mentoring and really helping run the agency, which has been fun to kind of talk with John about, talk through different strategies and whatnot. So John, talk to us a little bit. How did you end up in insurance?
The long story or the short version? Like which side would you like? Because it is kind of a long story. It's a very interesting story.
Whatever story you want to share, we are happy to hear.
Well, so my grandfather's a doctor, my dad's a doctor, and I was taught and raised that the only way to make money in this life is to become a doctor. So that's what I did. I'm actually a chiropractor by trade. So I went through college, got my doctorate, I practiced for a while, and I ended up retiring from that industry and got into real estate investing. So that's a whole nother story. We got into some real estate investing, and with the ebbs and flows of the markets and things that have happened in my personal life, divorce and some life changes, I'm like, I need a job that's got a steady income that I can build and I can really maximize that residual income, if you will. And that's what I loved about the real estate. And so insurance was the easy go-to. And so I talked to a lot of people and kind of went back and forth on different options. But a long story short, getting there, that's how I got in the insurance industry. Now, after a divorce, I got remarried. I've been remarried. It will be almost 9 years this summer. My wife, her first husband passed away from leukemia about 13 years ago. So I know I've shared this story a lot, and I can go into greater detail about this later, but we joined families. We Brady Bunched it essentially. So I've got 3 kids and she's got 3 kids. So my 3 stepboys don't have a living father, right? And I think that was the turning point where I started getting really, really passionate about life insurance. That story, I tell every one of our clients, every single person I'm selling life insurance to, I share that story with them because we've got friends on every end of the spectrum of where they didn't have life insurance plans and where they did have life insurance plans and everybody in between. And we've seen the pros and cons of having that. My wife was a recipient of a life insurance policy. And, it didn't make it so she never had to worry about money ever again, but it made sure she had a roof over her head and made sure my boys were taken care of and they had some opportunities that they otherwise wouldn't have had. And so I'm very, very passionate about making sure people have that insurance in place. So I think that's kind of where the ball really got rolling for me and realizing that is an underserved community or people out there who don't have that proper planning and don't sit down with their agents because it's like they just want to save money on their car insurance and stuff. So I think really that's kind of how I got into it and become kind of a passion for me.
I love that. I feel like the team members and even the agents that find the most success in production or just in the agency share that passion to a certain degree. And I think different life experiences that we have shaping that passion and kind of develop that further, which is interesting to hear, right? I'm very passionate about the life insurance product as well, but I haven't had a personal story that close to home, right? Which, for a lot of team members, John, I think that they hear that story and they're like, well, no wonder John's so passionate about life insurance, right? He's had that personal story. But I think it's important for team members that are listening to this to kind of note that you don't actually have to have something that personal that happens for you to find passion in life insurance, right? Find passion in helping people. And for me, what it took and to kind of get passionate about it, because when I first started insurance, I wasn't really passionate about insurance, right? And I know a lot of team members probably share that, like, how can you get so passionate about insurance, right? But I don't know if it's passionate about insurance, but I think it's passionate about the impact that we can have on people's lives, right? Helping people is ultimately what it boils down to. But for me, you know, as a young kid starting out in insurance, I didn't really have a reason why to bring up life insurance. But what it took for me was answering the phone call to a dad of someone that I personally grew up with. This dad told me that his son just passed away in a car accident. I had to be on the other end of that phone call and tell this dad that they didn't have any coverage in place. And he was asking, he said, Colter, do we have any coverage on our homeowners or our car insurance to cover, these funeral costs? And that was hard. That was extremely difficult for me to tell them they didn't. Knowing this family personally, and I kind of left that phone call with kind of this emptiness like, man, I feel like I dropped the ball here. I feel like our office dropped the ball here. We could have had a conversation with them. I don't know if we did. We didn't, we weren't great at notes at the time. So I was looking through notes, looking through opportunities, nothing, couldn't find anything. But I just felt this moral obligation after that to just bring it up with our customers and ultimately let them decide, right? Because there's a lot out of our control with the life insurance piece. But, as far as passion goes, guys, you don't have to have this personal story, which, by the way, listen to John, listen to this, utilize these stories. Like, let John's stories develop and strengthen your belief in the product, because you don't have to have that personal story to have that passion in that product, right? So, John, I know you. Do you have anything to touch on that, John?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Take my story, borrow my story, find whatever story works for you. And we can talk more about this and dive deeper, but I think stories sell better than anything else. If you really want to connect with someone's heart and who they are, and you got to tell a passionate story. But borrow my story, steal my story, take my story or somebody else's story and use it for your own. But yeah, you're right. I think the passion's about is not necessarily about the product. The passion, as you mentioned, is about helping someone. And I don't care if it's life insurance or I'm driving down the road and I see someone's pulled over with a flat tire and they don't know what to do. Like, I have a passion for helping people. And I think that's really what it comes down to. I've seen what the insurance can do for people and helping their lives. And so I have a passion for helping people in lives, and it's the insurance that I can do that with, right? That's my way of helping people. And that's what I enjoy. Whether it's, again, sometimes it's just taking a shopping cart back and putting it away for an old lady so she doesn't have to walk across the parking lot. Sometimes it's changing a tire or doing the dishes or something simple. For us, it's we get to help protect families with life insurance. That's how we help people.
And on the topic of helping people, which I love, John, I think sometimes for a lot of people, life's pretty hard, right? Like, mentally, a lot of people struggle. I know I struggle consistently mentally, and I think everybody does to a certain degree. The reason why I like helping people is because it just allows me to stop thinking so much about myself and start thinking about others. I found that when I can do that, I am more fulfilled with myself. I'm not kind of going down this rabbit hole of negative thinking and feeling bad for myself, but it's allowing me to actually find fulfillment in helping people. And so it's been this interesting thing where I like the quote, forget about yourself and go to work, forget about yourself and go serve others. And if you struggle mentally, or if you're struggling feeling fulfilled in life, I think the biggest way to feel fulfilled is just by helping others. And that's the beauty of what we can do in the insurance space is we can help them financially, right? We can help them protect and plan for the unthinkable. Because, if something like that were to happen, it's devastating. It's extremely hard. There's a void in that person's life, in that family's life by losing a loved one. Is the life insurance product going to completely fill that void? No. But is it going to provide space, allow that family to mourn, and not have an added financial burden on top of that? Absolutely. And guys, like, life in those situations are extremely difficult, right? And if you've lost a loved one or someone close to you, even a friend or anyone, like, those moments are very, very hard. But imagine adding financial burden on top of that. It makes it so much harder, a completely different thing that's harder to deal with, right? So that's the beauty of what we can do is help people in that way. So I love that.
I always like to joke. I say, money doesn't replace the life of a loved one at all, right? but it sure makes the passing easier. I'm like, so if you have your choice of losing your spouse and having financial burden, or losing your spouse and here's $1 million, which option would you take? Right. So that's how I look at it. I'm like, let's make your life a little bit easier through the worst of times. Right. And money does do that. It provides opportunity, especially if you have kids. But yeah, it's 100%.
And guys, I love that John, immediately starts sharing a story as we start this podcast. John is one of the best that I know at telling stories. And there's power in that, right? John, I know you've told me multiple times that, like, look, I feel like I find a lot of success in what I do as a team member, right? And by the way, guys, 15,000 plus annual premiums submitted every single month is what John is doing. Okay. And he's consistent. It's not like just a one-time thing, 1 month thing, but he does it month after month. I've seen it and it's been so fun to see. But John, you've credited a lot of your success to telling stories and building relationships. Can you talk a little bit about those things?
Yeah, so this actually stems back to when I mentioned I was a chiropractor. So I was working in an office where I would see between 80 and 100 patients a day. And so the patient would walk in and I had to diagnose them, build some sort of relationship with them, fix them, and send them on their way. And I learned what I refer to as kind of the 3 minute relationship, right? In an elevator conversation, if you will. To be able to build a relationship, get to know that person in a matter of just a couple of minutes and make it mean something. And so it's kind of, I was thrown into that, right? And I think that's kind of where I learned how to do this is I can on the phone very, very quickly learn something and build a relationship with that person on the other line. Okay. And I don't care what it's at or what it's about, whether it's their work, the weekend, sports, their hobbies, cooking, food, cars, kids, draw from all of your life experiences and find out what they enjoy and talk about it. Because we know this, people enjoy talking about themselves, right? And if I talk to someone and they've got something in common with me, like Colter, you and I, we actually started building a relationship because I found out you liked fly fishing. I love fly fishing. In fact, I TA'd the fly fishing class at college for several years and taught people how to fly fish for many, many years. And I love it, right? And so you and I built a great relationship on that. You and I went fly fishing one day and we had an awesome time. But it's just those random little things that you can draw connections with and build a relationship upon. And you've got to do it quickly. What I mean by quickly is I took a sales class years and years and years ago on how to be a phenomenal telemarketer, how to be on the phone and sell on the phone. And there's one thing that I remember. I don't remember all this. It was a 2 week course, and I don't remember anything except for one. One thing is I've always taken with me. It says if you want to sell, you've got to make friends. Period. And so I have a goal to make as many friends on the phone as possible. Like I've got friends, when our clients that we literally cry on the phone together. They're going through a divorce or they just lost a loved one or financial burden or their kids are going off to college and they're missing their kids or their kids are getting married. And those are all things we get to talk about and they get emotional. I get emotional. And that's how we build a relationship because we're friends. I probably have clients that live in other states now that I could call up. We've never met in person. I call up and say, hey, I'm coming through. Do you mind if I just, sleep on your couch really quick? Just, I'm on a road trip and I guarantee they'd open the door and let me just stay on the couch. And that's my goal is to build as many friends and relationships as possible. And I honestly, I think that's 100% what my success is I just care. Like I love to get to know people and I hope that people on the other line feel that way. But I think that's what comes down to a lot of my success is I just love to get to know people and know who they are.
I love it. I love it. The biggest tip is to make friends in sales. Love that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I mean, thinking logically through the conversations and how they go, if we're at a friend to friend basis, we can kind of be a little bit more direct with our recommendations, right? It becomes a lot easier to talk about these things, but we're also to a point where the customer's guard is down. They don't have the wall up. And so when we talk and we make recommendations, number one, they're actually listening, right? And when they can listen, they can understand what it does for them and the genuine concern or the reason why we're making this recommendation. And we start writing more policies from that alone. So I love that. John, I guess one thing too, I think as far as kind of how the industry and I think the whole sales industry is kind of moving, I honestly feel like it's moving to more of a transactional type business in a lot of ways. Okay. Meaning if Coulter buys a vehicle over the weekend, or Coulter needs to do something with his insurance, I feel like I'm not going to take 30 minutes or an hour out of my day to come and meet with John, right? I'm probably just going to call him on my way to work, add that vehicle, and kind of expect it to be done fairly quickly. So with that, for me, I started to kind of mirror that with customers. If customers don't want to come into the office and meet with me, I don't want to I don't want to go against the grain and try to get people to do what they don't want to do, right? Instead, I started to mirror them. If they want to do business with me transactionally, I can do business with them transactionally. And that made a big difference for me in the industry and starting to just sell more. And so my question, John, for you is, knowing that the business is kind of more transactional now than it really ever has been, how can we still build that relationship with our customers when we're still just having these smaller transactional type interactions with our customers, not the in office or not the 30 minutes on a phone call type appointment?
So, I have my go-to questions, right? And again, like we can be transactional and still let the other person know we care about them. You call me up and you want to add a car. You want to do very transactionally. Hey, I just got a new car. Oh, great. Is this like you replacing a car? What kind of car? And if it's a newer car, it's like, oh, that's such a nice car. That's great. I love that car. I mean, get excited about the new car. Let them know it's a great car, and ask them, are you on your way to work? It sounds like you're driving. Like, cool. Where do you work? Let me get your details and I'll add it. Oh, how long have you been there? How long have you been working there? I heard that's a great company. I mean, if you know it, then talk about them. If it's a line of work that you're familiar with, have a conversation with them about it. If it's a line of work you're not familiar with, ask them about it. That's the thing I try and like I share with our newer team members. Like, well, we don't have all your life experiences. We're 19 and 22 years old, and we're not as old as I am, right? And I'm like, well, if you don't know what it is, then ask them, right? I learned when I was practicing as a chiropractor, I had people come in and I asked them what they did for work, and I one patient in particular, he worked for a company that created drill bits for mining and like drilling down for oil and stuff like that. And I started asking, I was like, oh, what are they made out of? What kind of material? And they would use like some sort of diamond type of thing that they and so it could drill through the rock. And he told me all about it. Had another patient that flew Black Hawk helicopters, and I was asking about the helicopters and what it was like, and the different technology. If you don't know something, ask them about it. If it's your profession or it's the other person's profession, ask them about it. Oh, I've heard about that. I'm not familiar with that. How does that work? Explain to me how that works. I had a client in here one time, and my team members were like, "What the crap are you guys even talking about?" He does this weird technology where they basically look in the blood for an enzyme that can detect different types of diseases and stuff like that. And we were all into the physiology, anatomy about it and stuff, and it was really cool. And he's like, I've never had anybody ask me so much about my job. I really appreciate you actually caring. They just ask questions about the people. What's the book, How to Win Friends and Influence People? I forget who writes it. That's one of the greatest
Dale
books ever.
Carnegie, I think his name.
Yeah. One of the greatest books ever. If you want to learn how to build relationships with people quickly, ask them questions. Get them talking about themselves. It doesn't have to be a 30-minute phone call. It can be real quick and easy.
Love it. We're in the people business, right?
We are.
Like I think any sort of business now, the more you can understand about people and honestly make friends, the more successful you're going to be. I see that so much. And I mean, John, I love that we're kind of hitting on this because it's such a big thing. And I think maybe for the younger, generation coming up, it's a little intimidating to kind of have these conversations with people because we don't have these life experiences, or you know, we don't know what questions to ask. But honestly, guys, what it boils down to is be interested in people instead of trying to be interesting to them, right? Take a genuine interest, care about what they do. And the biggest way to do that is just to take an interest in them, ask them questions, right? And I love that, John, because in my mind, I'm a very I like to know the steps of where I'm going to take the conversation next, which is why, in our team member perspective group, we train on these sales plays where it's like step one is your pivot, Step 2 is your transition, presentation, close, right? So it's like the sales process on this straight line. And so I like that because then I know where to take the conversation next. But what I love about what we're talking about here is if at any point in that conversation you can take a genuine interest in that person's life and take a little detour off of this line of your process and talk to them about what they do for a living and go a little bit deeper with them. Like, how long have you been doing that? Did you grow up thinking you wanted to do that? Like, just ask them questions about them and their life. And I mean, you're going to find a lot more success. Selling's not going to be so hard anymore, right? And
It's
so
fun.
there's a
It's
lot of
conversational.
it is absolutely, but it works so effective, right? So I feel like if we want to stand out in the insurance space, because here's the thing, all of our customers, all of our prospects, innately they're going to view us as salespeople, those sleazy insurance salespeople, right? It's just the industry. We can't control that. That's how they're going to kind of view us. So if we want to stand out, if we want to get customers' guards down, take in genuine interest in their lives. And here's the cool thing is it's going to go in, it's going to help you in so many ways in your conversation because I'm going to start to learn things about John, what matters to John the most, what he's, maybe afraid of the most, or, what's most important to him. And all of a sudden, now I can tie that into our conversation. I can customize these coverages and these protections for John and his specific situation. Now, all of a sudden, oh, Colter's not this salesperson. He actually cares about me. And this stuff actually makes sense. So we can get to a point where there's mutual understanding. And then, we provide enough value. We help educate our customers on really, here's the risks that we face. We provide them the solutions and we tell them the benefits of why it's important. Then customers will start doing business with you. Right. So I love that.
Yeah. And getting to know them personally, you'll know what their needs are and what their wants are and their desires. And I've got an appointment set for, this coming Monday that we're doing $1 million life insurance policy on her and her husband. Well, I come to find out her husband's first spouse passed away. So he's a widower. So this is his second marriage. And so I said, hey, that's interesting. Like, it's very similar to my life. I was like, I'm married to a widow. I was like, you probably know the difficulties and some of the emotional issues I go through, like celebrating the birthday of someone that my wife is in love with, celebrating the day that he passed away, celebrating this man's life who I never met, who is the father of my stepkids. And she's like, holy crap, you understand. There's very few people that understand those emotions. I was like, I get it. And so that was something that we really built a relationship on. She's like, I've never had anybody been so open about kind of that emotion of remarrying or marrying a widow or widower. And I said, well, obviously, since his spouse passed away, you guys understand how important life insurance is. And she goes, yes. And we want to get it with you because you understand what we're going through. So if people know you understand, people care, they know that you care about them. And it's not to manipulate the situation. It's to find out the best way to help them. Right. The better I know you, the better I can know how to help you. And that's how I look at it. The better I know that person on the other line that's sitting in front of me, the better I know how I can actually help them and what their needs are. If I know what their needs are, then I know what to offer them. I know how to talk to them. I know what works for them.
That's like you're speaking their language, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
you're speaking to me of why this stuff is important, right? We always talk about in our group, John, of talk about the benefits, not the features. But I feel like it's such an easy thing in insurance because it's a complex space. It's not really understood by us. And we're the professionals in the business, let alone by our customers. And so because it's so complex, we just go with, hey, we can get you some life insurance this, life insurance that. But guess what? People don't really care about that. They care about what the life insurance is going to do for them and why it would be important to even get, right? And so it's our job to do that. And asking these questions, taking a genuine interest in people's lives allows us to understand people, understand what motivates them, what, all of those things so we can speak to them and customize to them. And it's just a completely different game. So guys, listening to this, if you're like me, I'm always like the how, right? Like this is a great strategy. Like we need to make friends and we need to talk to people and take an interest in them and build a relationship with them and tell stories. But my mind is like, okay, I'm feeling really good about this, but I want to know action steps, right? I want to know what can I do to actually be better at building relationships with my customers? What can I do better to tell stories and be more convincing and compelling and be able to demonstrate the importance through these stories? I want to know the how. So the cool thing with our group is that's what we train on. We train on those details because I, as a team member, I always wanted the details. I wanted to know exactly what people were saying, what team members were saying to build relationships, to tell compelling stories. Here's the cool thing, guys, is John is actually one of our team member mentors and coaches. And here in the near future, we are going to have a training dedicated around building a relationship and telling compelling stories. And John's going to help us do that, right? And so I'll tell you, if we can just further our skills at understanding people and understanding how to build a relationship, but also tell compelling stories, we're all going to sell more. Okay. And so I would encourage you, team members, agents, right? Team members, if you want to get better at selling, get better at building relationships with people, get better at telling stories, come join us. Come learn with us. Learn what other team members across the country are doing. Come learn how John really develops a relationship. And we'll get into the details of exactly what questions to ask, when to ask them, and just get better together, right? But also how to tell those compelling stories, right? Agents, if you want your team members to develop those skills further, come join us. Have your team members join us and have this team member community that allows for that to happen. So, John, we love having you as a team member coach. I hear from team members all the time how they leave these Wednesday practice calls, they leave these life training calls, and like, you know what, John, thank you for sharing your experiences with us. Thank you for sharing how you're making it happen in your office. And so it's been fun to have you and have you teach these other team members and just where we can all learn and get better. I guess one of the things I'd like to know is, over the last 6 months, what's been like the biggest change that you've seen in your agency with your team members?
That's a good question. What's, going back to my experiences, right? In life, I've never found it difficult to sell because I've just always genuinely wanted to know about the person in front of me. So I found building relationships has been easy for me. The things that I don't know is the process, right? The process of selling something, or the product knowledge, right? And that's the one thing I'll say that we've noticed in our office over the last 6 months. It's changed a lot. When we started working with you and really going through your programs and learning the processes, because once you take a process like you do, and you're phenomenal making these processes, these step-by-step instructions on how to pivot and how to, bring in, I don't know, teenagers or anything like that, right? Once you take that process and you mix it up with the ability to build a relationship with someone, I think it's killer. And so we have actually taken that in our office. And I think the last several months of last year, we did more in just the last couple months than we did the whole year combined or the previous year. This year, we have done more in the first 3 months than we did all of last year. Right now, we're on track to hit, level 4 travel and all the things, right? We're doing amazing right now. And honestly, it all comes down to what we do in our office is it's kind of, we build our training around TMP actually. So on Monday morning, we review what we studied on Friday's training. On Tuesday, we go maybe some more product knowledge and a little more in depth of what we studied on Friday. Wednesday morning, we do more kind of product knowledge, or we do like scenarios in our office of, hey, who's had great pivots, who had bad pivots? Like, what can we do to role play and do better at it? Then we have our Wednesday training, right? Wednesday training with TMP. So what do we do Thursday? We review the TMP training on Thursday morning. And then we review it again Friday morning. So our training in our office, we spend about 30 minutes a day reviewing mostly what we had studied on the Wednesday and Friday trainings in TMP, and it's made a huge difference. We've got people one of our team members, he sold one life insurance policy in the first year and a half that he was here. And in the last 3 months, I think he sold like 6. So we took a guy who's sold one in 18 months, and now that we've been pushing and doing a lot of training, sold like 6 in the last 3 months. Like doing it. My 19-year-old daughter is at our office, knows absolutely nothing about insurance. And she's been at the office like 4 or 5 months, and she's selling life insurance on a regular basis due to the trainings. And it's awesome. It's really, really quite amazing to see. We've got team members who've been here for a long time who've never ever pivoted, and now they're pivoting. Now they're selling life insurance. In fact, we even have a team member who's not licensed in life, but he pivots and is like, "Oh, looks like you talked to John about life insurance. Let me send you on over. He can help you out with that." And he's pushing people our direction to make sure we can pivot and then actually sell life. It is this whole community. It's like a community thing here in our office now. We have competitions on who can pivot the most. It's a lot of fun. It's been really, really cool. It's made a huge difference in our production.
Well said, John. I appreciate you for sharing that. You know, that's really that's our goal is we want to help empower the team members to go out and have these conversations, have the skill sets to do it, but also have kind of the roadmap to know where to take the conversation. And it's fun to hear the impact that it's had in your agency, but I'll have to tell you, all of this is happening because of the leadership in your office, right? John, I mean, you're an incredible leader. You are taking this training and you're helping your team members implement it, helping them develop themselves further to actually go out and find results, right? And so, you know, a lot of what I deal with, you know, agents and team members is they always talk about, you know, we just don't have any time to train. But John, you just told me outside of team member perspective, which is twice a week, Wednesdays and Fridays, right? Fridays we train, Wednesdays we practice. All of those other days, you are still training. So that's a big thing that a lot of agencies, a lot of team members deal with is this limiting belief that I just don't have the time to train. What do you have to say about that, John?
Well, I can't take all the credit for it. Honestly, I have an amazing agent. Our agent here is phenomenal. He's giving us the freedom to, he's giving me the freedom to kind of coach, the team, and he coaches me. I mean, he's a mentor. He's my mentor, right? And so he was obviously bright enough and smart enough to say, "Hey, I recognize something in TMP. I need it in my office." And maybe in years past, he just didn't know how to implement these principles and stuff. And your training showed him how to actually do that, right? And so I think that's has been the huge thing is we've taken what you've done with TMP and the guidance of my agent, and we've been able to apply it to everybody here. But I'll tell you, outside, I'm a firm believer if you don't practice it, you're not going to do it. So outside of TMP, I do feel like you have to practice, and I'm a big believer in that 80-20 rule. 20% of the people do 80% of the work. My goal is always to just be in that 20%. I want to be in the 20% top producers in everything that I do. I want to, I don't have to be number one in every category, but if I'm in the top 20%, I'm doing really, 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 really good. And I think what the training has done, the daily training and the weekly training with TMP, it's put us in that top 20 percentile to where we are doing that 80% of the work. And that's, we're pretty happy about that. So, but it's not me. It's the TMP. It's my agent that's given us the ability to and the flexibility to be able to do the trainings. I know I'm never going to be the fastest marathon runner, but man, if I can be in the top 20% in my age group and my height and weight and all that kind of stuff, like I'm doing really good. And so I think what the TMP does is it brings people who are in that lower percentile. You're putting us in that 20 percentile where we're actually doing really, really good. And it's not hard work. It's just sometimes it's like a little bit of change in trajectory, right? And I've heard that analogy of if you're flying across the country from San Francisco to New York, right? 1 degree off will be tens of, hundreds of miles possibly off from where you want to land, right? So you're always trying to make these little changes in your trajectory. And I think that's what TMP does and that daily training does is it changes the trajectory to where you want to go. You get off track, it puts you on track. Right? If you don't know which way to go, this at least puts you in the right direction. Instead of heading south, you're now heading east. You're heading where you're supposed to go. And that's what I like about this is that daily training, the weekly training, it keeps us on track. It keeps the trajectory going the right way so we can accomplish the goals and what we need to do.
I love it. And I think we all get in these same patterns, right? We down to like what we eat, the way we drive to work, our conversations, what we do in the office. And if we look at it and we want to take our agency to a different level, we've got to do things a little bit differently, right? Like we can't expect to go to here when we're right here and we're doing the same things that are keeping us right here. Like we've got to make some adjustments. And so training, although we're taking some time away from the phones, away from our customers, we've got to look at it as return on time, return on investment, being able to make that 1 degree shift that can make all of the difference. I got to a point where, I mean, all of us, we have the same amount of time in the day. And I always think it's intriguing to kind of think about, well, what is it that separates a team member that's writing 20 life insurance applications a month versus the one that's writing two? It's not time. We all got the same amount of time, right? And quite frankly, I've been in the position where I'm writing 20 life apps a month and I'm working maybe 3 to 4 hours a day in the office, right? And so I kind of busted that, limiting belief with myself that, it's not the time, but it's what we're doing with the time that matters. And so that's where, yeah, we might be away from the phones for a minute. We might have, a few voicemails to catch up on just because we're training, we're developing ourselves further. But that is going to allow us to make those 1 degree changes that will make all of the difference, to where now we don't need to work the full 8 hours of the day to get the life app, but now we can be strategic of here's where we can go, here's how to have the conversation, here's how to get better, so that what we're doing, we have higher leverage for the input that allows us to get the desired output of selling more life insurance, selling more disability, whatever it is that we're shooting for.
Funny you say that, because one of our team members, he was full-time. The one I was telling you that worked here for 18 months, about a year and a half, full-time. He recently, about 3-4 months ago, moved to part-time. Went from 5 days a week down to 3 days a week. You know what's amazing? His production is still the same. He's still producing just as much PNC, and now he's producing more life, and he's working 3 days a week instead of 5 days a week. So you are 100% correct. It is not about the amount of time you put into it. It's what you do with the time and how to utilize the time. So yes, taking 2 or 3 hours out every single week to train will make you so much better. It will increase your production. It will increase your ability to produce every single hour and make you more effective is what it will do.
And there's a quote by Abraham Lincoln, I believe. He says, if, going to cut down a tree, give me 6 hours to cut down a tree, I will spend the first 4 sharpening the saw. Right? And so, I've seen that. It's so true. But sometimes we just get in our heads and we think that we've got to be there to answer every single phone call that comes in, or every single customer. We've got to attend to them, or they're going to leave us. And we get in this mindset of that. And I've been there, right? Our office, we went from a 5-day work week to a 4-day work week. Okay. The last year that we had a 5-day work week, I had my big breakout year in selling life insurance. I wrote 123 life apps. Okay. The year before that, I did about 10. Well, the following year, our agent approaches us and says, hey, I've been wanting to do this 4-day work week for a long time. I feel like it'll be a great benefit for you guys, but as we've got to keep our production up for this to make sense, right? And obviously, we closed Fridays. You better believe my agent was a little concerned. He's like, I don't know how this is going to go. We're going to have customers that are going to leave us. Are they going to be angry with us? What's our production going to look like? Me, I don't like to be a one-hit wonder. And so having that breakout year, I'm like, oh my gosh, we got to do this again with 1 less day a week, 52 less days a year, right? So I was like, how in the world am I going to do this? But I remember sitting in our training meeting that was towards the end of the year, and we're kind of talking about planning for the following year. And my agent congratulates me in front of our team. He says, look, Colter did awesome. He wrote 123 life apps. I was the top in Utah at the time. And he's just like, look, guys, let's congratulate Colter. And he's like, Colter, do you have anything to say? John, I don't know if I was being just like this arrogant, cocky, whatever, but I just remember he's like, what do you have to say? And I said, I'm going to double it this next year. And I was kind of joking, but I remember feeling like, oh my gosh, what did I just get myself into, right? How am I going to double this thing, right? And I had my stomach sink, but now all of a sudden I said it. And I don't like to be the person that says something, does something different. I like to actually walk the walk. And so I told my agent that, and thinking, oh my gosh, we're actually going to a 4-day work week the next year. I was stressed out. But funny enough, I ended up writing 231 life apps. So I was close to doubling it, but with 1 day less a week. Not quite. Exactly, John. Not quite. Didn't quite do it. But it was cool to see that, I believe, whatever time that we allot ourselves, John, if you give yourself 8 hours to clean your garage on a Saturday, how long do you think you're going to clean your garage? How long is it going to take you to clean your garage? How long are you going to, how many?
12.
Are you going to use that 4 hours? Right? If you're like me, I'm like, oh yeah, I might have 4 or 5 drink breaks and just relax, throw some classic rock on, some dad music in the garage. And I'd probably take that full 8 hours, right? But what if you only give yourself 2 hours? Probably going to get the same amount of work done, and it might be just as good, right? That's what I found out to happen within this space in business is like, look, if you give yourselves 4 days a week to make it happen, you can do it, right? And it's fun to hear that your team member has, he went from full time to part time, and now, keeping his production there and even doing more financial service production with less time. So it's a limiting belief that a lot of agents and team members and me, and I think you, John, that we deal with. But it's fun to hear these different examples of, it's really not the case. So, well, John, this has been awesome, my man. I mean, we could go on for much longer. John and I, we've spent some time on the river fishing, which was a blast and a half, by the way. John, it was very kind, took me down to his neck of the woods, showed me around, and we got into some fish. It was a great time, John. We're going to have to do that again. But, John, we're going to have you back, right? As I mentioned, John, he is one of our team member coaches. There is so much to learn from John. I am learning every day from him. He's very positive in his energy. He wants to accomplish more, and just surrounding myself with those types of people helps me honestly just do better, right? And John is an expert. He's one of the best that I know at building relationships, at telling stories. And so that's why I brought John on as a coach, because I see value in what he's doing. I know that learning to do what he's doing, just getting better at building relationships, still at telling stories, everything, I mean, we're going to get to the next level. And so I'd encourage you to reach out to us, come rub shoulders with us, come learn from John, and let's take our production to the next level. So, John, appreciate you, my man, and we'll have to do this again.
Hey, thank you so much. Appreciate the time, the friendship, and all that you've done for our office and our team members. So it's been a joy to work with you for sure.
Totally. Well, I appreciate you, John. All right, TMP, we will catch you next time.